for joining in. I'm going to request the ability to screen share. There you go. Thank you. All right. Hello, welcome to our third session at Schulich Ignite. Just set everything up here. Yeah, so this session is going to be, we're going to be introducing events in Pygame and talking a bit about methods. So yeah, thank you for sort of joining us. I'm going to start to get going, and I want to start off this sort of session today with just a quick announcement or sort of advertisement for the for a competitive programming competition hosted by one of the clubs at the University of Calgary. It is open to high school students and closes March 3rd, so this Wednesday. I think you would have also gotten a notification on it on the Discord server as well. Me and one of the execs at this sort of club at Ignite are actually working on some of the problems. So we've got it would be nice if some of you kind of come by and so I think I knocked my microphone, but so I'm going to copy the link here, and I'm just going to post it in the chat, and you can talk to your mentors. You can ask me about it later. It's just something, if you think you already know a little bit about Python and you already have some experience with things like that, you're looking for challenges, we got plenty. So yeah, we'd like to see some of you come by and check it out. So with that said, I'm hoping everyone who's going to be joining us has started to join us, and we'll get started once this loads. I'm going to have to reload my tab. All right. Someone's waiting. Okay. Let's see. All right. All right, so as I mentioned, today's session is going to be on events. I see there's a few people who are starting to come in, and for some reason my computer is being particularly slow. That's okay. The session is going to go kind of quick. Going to give you a lot of time for some of these exercises, which is weird. There you go. So we're starting. So. Apologies for the slow speed. And it's taking its time. How much time do we have? Oh, we're fine. Waiting for docs. There you go. Okay, so for those who just joined us, there's a competitive programming competition. Ask your mentors and stuff. Maybe I can also give you the link later. So let's get into this. So session overview, as I said, methods, Pygame events, and we're also going to start into kind of making like a little player character that we can move around. So this is going to require us to kind of review a little bit about objects, which is what we did last session, if you don't remember. We had this analogy where a variable is kind of like this box that has sort of things that we have inside it. And an object is just sort of like a variable, but it has other variables that we can access inside of it, right? And so here's sort of an example. You have our object, and that object has variables, and each of those variables has like different values inside of it. And if you remembered, we looked into making different objects and making variables inside objects that stored other objects and things like that. Now we're going to look into what are called methods, which are just sort of like variables in objects that are also functions, right? So these are useful for a lot of things. So why are they useful? They simplify the process, right? So we can kind of think about code sort of without methods. And here, for example, this is an example of us just moving this dog. We're going to grab each paw, we're going to move it sort of one direction, right? This is annoying. And we would have to, if you wanted to move the paw, if you wanted to move the dog in multiple times in our code, we would have to write these 4 lines everywhere, right? So, and the drawback of that is, well, what if later on down the line, we decide that we wanted to change how the dog moves, right? We would have to go back and find every instance of these 4 lines and then change them all at once, which is annoying, right? So it would be better if we made a function that can change the dog, right? It would be better if we just made a function that'll move the dog. But if we simply make a function that moves the dog, we can pass anything into that function, right? Even if it's not actually a dog. So just for sort of kind of to keep things sort of concise, it's better for us to make a method that belongs specifically to that dog, and we can just move that dog, right? And so we're going to see more examples of this. So it uses that familiar object dot and then sort of verb syntax, right? So dog move, right? Dog dot move, and then these brackets, like if it was a function. And this is just going to move that. We would just call that anywhere in the code. And then if you wanted to change how that dog moves down the line, we would only have to go inside this move function and then change that there, right? So as this methods are just functions that, as I said, belong to the class, but they belong specifically to those objects. So if I have 2 different dogs and I call the same method on them, that method is going to be working on each object individually, right? So it's going to move each dog, right? So it's not like kind of a universal thing for each dog. Each dog is going to have the same move method, but each method is going to work on an individual dog, right? And so when we declare them, we're going to need this sort of self parameter, just like when we had init. Remember when we were initializing our objects, right? We've taken this self parameter. This is going to become very important because that self parameter is sort of that, so is the object that we're acting on, right? If you remember how we used it in the last session here, right? So we pass in self as the first argument to this init method, right? What we're going to do with functions now, or non-functional but methods, is we want to do the same thing. The first parameter is going to be self, and then we want to use self, and we can access items from self, and this is going to be that specific object. So in this case, we have Sam as this person was born in 2004. Then we want to get age. If I were to make a separate person called, I don't know, George, and maybe they were born in 2005. If I were to call it get age, it's gonna work on his birth year specifically, right? It's the same method. It's the same method called on 2 objects, and it's gonna work on, each of them individually. Additionally, it is true that we could also just make a function that will do this, right? These sort of have the same syntax, and they work almost identically. The big difference here, though, is that if we are to make a ton of functions, we can lose track of where those functions are, right? And those functions could be defined in completely different places in our code, and we can lose where these are. We might forget that we have them. If they're a part of our methods, we can always come back and change them later, and they're also kind of attached to that person, right? And that allows us to do a bit more complicated things with methods that we can't exactly do with functions, or at least aren't as easy to do with functions, right? Because we can access that specific object itself. So here's a method example. So this is going to be a snake, right? And then we're going to have methods inside of this class, and we're going to basically have this initialize our constructor, right? We initialize it, give it an X position, a Y position, and a color, and we want to move it up. And then all we're going to do is we're going to take this self.y and we're going to subtract, because if you remember, going down is going to be kind of if a negative y is upwards, in our sort of window. And then we want to move it right. We want to add sort of some distance, right? So if you notice the indentation, we have to indent and then define the method and then indent again, right? So it's pretty much just the same process as when we made this init. And that's because init is a method. So it's all sort of comes back to that. And as once I said, it's once you add that self parameter, then it's a method. So yeah, we want, and that's how we can get it to interact with the objects. So we're going to move on to this sort of quick question. And that's going to be sort of a simple question. So what and where is the error in this code? There's an error here somewhere, right? So we're going to see if you can sort of spot it. There's going to be a poll that shows up. So let's see. Okay. Getting some answers so far. Mm-hmm. Going to give you about another 20 seconds. About half of you have answered so far. All right, so it seems like 100% of you have answered line 5 with this sort of defined birthday missing self, line 5. And yeah, you're entirely correct, because what we're doing here is we're going to be taking self and then age and then adding 1, but we haven't specified what self is, right? In order for us to specify that, we would have to pass it into the function, right? And in that case, anytime we use that sort of dot operator, right, that's when we're passing it into the function. We're sort of passing the object in as that parameter so we can access it, right? So here's going to be sort of a continuation of sort of what we did. This is, remember this previous slide I looked at, where this is just going to be kind of how we would call these things. You would make our constructor, call this method, and call that one, right? As I said, self is automatically added when we add that sort of period. So yeah, they can also return values. So they're just like regular methods or regular functions where we can pass things in and then have them return stuff. So so in this case, we're just checking if something is off screen, right? So we have this sort of if check, and then we just return a value, right? So this is where we get into the first exercise. And it's going to be, so it's called homework time. And then all what we're going to be doing is you're going to make a class called student, and it's going to be in a file called student.py. And then it's going to have the following member variables. So it's going to have homework and a name. And then it has to have 2 methods. And you're going to have the add homework method, where you add a certain number of questions. And then you want to have sort of this get number of questions method, which is going to give you the amount of questions you have to do, right? So this is kind of an example of what you want to do. You want to have this print statement where you take student name, has student, get number of questions to do, right? So in this case, George, I added 2 pieces of homework, 5 pieces of homework, 3 pieces of homework. And then finally, George has 10 questions to do for homework. So go ahead. We're going to give you a few minutes to go work on that. And we're going to put you into breakout rooms as you figure that out. So, okay, looks like we're starting to move in. Yeah, I can see people moving. All right, I'm gonna give my computer a break. All right. I'm going to, but yeah, it'll be fun. Just grab like 2 of your friends or something like that. Because I did ACPC with some friends, and that was super fun. All right, I see people are joining us again. Let me just have to grab chat. There you go. Okay, so still got people in their rooms. They got 20 seconds. I'll wait just a little bit more. Right, are people arrived? Oh, I see we have like about 20 people. Okay, yeah, so people are starting to come back. So hello. So we're gonna start talking about Pygame events now. And so these events are going to be pretty important because this is kind of how we can identify when things happen. So like if I press a key, right? So currently we've only been talking about drawing things, right, on our screen and then making them move, right? But we can't really control them. We can only write the code at the start and then just they run and they do something, but we can't control them, right? So we want to have like, when we're making games, we want to have responsive games. We want our characters to be able to do things. We want the things in the world to respond, right? So the part of how we can do this is with events. So events basically include things like arrow keys, button presses, anytime I press anything on my keyboard, right? Those sorts of things, those are events. So you want to deal with these and handle them in some way. So the way we can do this, so we've already kind of dealt with this a little bit. If you look in the code where we go for event in Pygame event get, if event type is Pygame quit, right? And system.exit. So what this is doing is it's just looking, is basically saying for every event, if that event is telling us to quit the game, right? If you wanted to, you could overwrite this code with whatever you wanted. But you'll notice that if you did that, you can't close the game anymore, right? So that's one specific event that's really important, is having that kind of quit event, knowing when to stop the game. And so, of course, there's keyboard events that we can look for. So get key.get pressed is going to tell us if a key was pressed. And then what we can do is we can use this sort of syntax pygame.key up, key left, key right, key down, right, as sort of just to check if that key has been pressed. So you notice I have this pass and then this sort of comment saying to replace this line. If we were to replace this with whatever we wanted, such as my snake move right, move right 10 units, that's going to do something, right? So the basic syntax here is it's going to be capital K underscore and then the key name. So for example, key underscore W, right? That's going to tell it, that's going to give us our W key. Key underscore A is going to be our A key, right? Key underscore 1 is going to be 1, right? So there's a whole bunch of different keys we can press. You probably don't need to worry about all of them yet, right? But just something to kind of keep in mind. So we're going to kind of cut right into quick question number 2. What will be printed when the following code is run? When A, the right arrow, and the number 4 are pressed all at the same time. So I'm going to be pressing 4 keys. That's going to be the A button, the right arrow, and then I'm going to be pressing number 4. If I were to press all of these at the same time, what is going to be printed on this screen? So we're going to give you about a minute, 30 seconds to kind of answer all this. So, okay, we're getting some responses. Less than half of you responded though, so I'm going to give you about another 30 seconds. Okay. So almost a minute, more than half of you responded. So I'm going to be getting into the sort of solution here quickly. So this kind of, so what we want to kind of remember here is when we have our else if statements, right? So this else elif is an else if statement. This elif is only going to run if this original sort of top thing, if this top statement here is false. So I don't know why this is doing this thing, but you can all kind of see the results, I suppose. So if the key pressed is not the right key, then this is going to run. So what we're going to do is if I press all these keys at the same time, which I can press all the keys at the same time. So what that's going to do is it's going to say, okay, this key was pressed, so it's not going to run this code. So arrow pressed is going to be run. Then we have a big space here, so we don't have another elif. So what this is going to run again. This is going to actually check. So now it's going to check if 4 was pressed, and 4 was pressed, right? So print is going to be, and then so it's going to print number pressed, right? So yeah, it's going to print arrow pressed and then number pressed. All right, so let's check. All right, so let's kind of keep moving. So we're gonna think, so this is where tuples come back in to play. So the mouse position is a tuple of X and a Y, right? So an X and a Y. So we can get that using, so if you remember with the keys, we have this get underscore pressed, right? So Pygame key get pressed. We have Pygame mouse get position. That's how we want to get our mouse position, right? And then here's going to give us an X and a Y. So we can check if this has X, right? Or if it has a Y using sort of the zero-based indexing, right? So this 0 is going to be X, this 1 is going to be Y. So currently pressed mouse buttons also are a tuple. So it's going to be left, middle, right. So mouse button 0 is going to be mouse button 0 is going to be the left. It's going to be either true or false, right? True, it was pressed. False, it wasn't, right? Middle is not going to be, if I only press the right button, this left is not going to be not true. This middle is not going to be true, and this right is not going to be true. So we would just check pretty much almost the exact same way we would be checking for keys pressed, except we would use sort of 0 and 1, right, to index into that. So this is where we get into the next exercise, and we have plenty of time for this one, actually. So this is going to be ready player. So we're going to need you to make a class. It's going to be called player, and this is going to have a rectangle, and that's going to move with your keyboard. So you're going to control it. If you want, maybe if for some of you who did the platforms from last session, you have some sort of rectangles and stuff like that. Maybe you want to try doing some sort of collision, so you can't move your character inside those rectangles, right? That's sort of, as a bonus, you can even see, oh, if I click, make my player teleport to that side of the screen if I click, right? And so, yeah, so we have sort of an, you want to check for whether buttons have been pressed, and then you want to move your character somehow. You want to also check if your mouse has been pressed. You want to also move the character sort of somehow. So that's kind of for you to kind of figure out and piece together. And you got like a whole hour to kind of fiddle with that. So good luck. And if you have any questions about the CCPC, you can ask me. I'll be in some of your breakout rooms sort of as well. And if you have any questions about this, ask your mentors too. So yeah, good luck. I think that's about it as well. It's sort of a quick session, kind of just more of an exercise-based session. So yeah, good luck. You can see some of you are starting to move. Okay, people aren't assigned. Let's back this up. I'm going to stop sharing to save my computer. That was a really quick session. I didn't skip any slides this time though, and we give him extra time for the first exercise, so that's good. Well, there you go. Hello. If you want, you can join your breakout room session. Should be available.
James, feel free to join the breakout room.